Welcome back. This is part 2 of our amazing interview with Kris Barrett. I have Kris here in the studio. Welcome back, Kris.
Thank you.
So I guess one of the questions would be, how demanding was that to did you like throw everything out of your pantry? Did you I mean, I know what you did because I've read it, but how hard is that? I mean, and for families out there, you know, what would be a step that they would need to take?
Yeah, look, for most families that I work with, they are exactly the same as Tim. The kids eat a very, very small number of foods, and all those foods need to go. And look, I hit the wall after I changed the diet just quietly because, I mean, it was ridiculous because I would spend... You remember, this wasn't even, Facebook wasn't even around, and, internet was the whole dial up and get off the phone and stuff. So I was trying to cobble things together, cooking with ingredients I'd never heard of. I was getting things from America because I couldn't buy them here, and I had American cookbooks from the library. And there were so many tears, and a lot of them were mine because I spent an hour in the kitchen and I'd give it to him and he'd throw it on the floor and scream, and there was many, many tantrums. But what I want everyone to understand is it's very, very common, and the kids literally become addicted to those foods, so you need to go through a withdrawal process. And so it's, you need to set yourself up for some kids it's fairly easy to change, just to switch things out. So change pasta to gluten-free pasta, change bread to gluten-free bread. For some kids, they're so stuck on a certain brand or the certain packet that things come in that it takes a lot longer, and some kids would rather not eat than eat something different. So that takes a little bit longer, but if you keep in mind that it's a short-term pain because they're just going through that withdrawal of it's like a drug addict not getting their drugs, and these kids, they want that fix. Yeah. They want it.
And I guess too, because as I was reading the book, I read a part where you actually would go to McDonald's and get the McDonald's chip cup and actually put your interpretation of chips into the cup so that Tim had some sort of recognition of something that was for him to be.
Look, I was beyond. I had to do what I had to do, and I think it was quite ingenious.
I think it's awesome.
He liked McDonald's chips, and he would go, "This is not my chips." So look, this is the packet. That must be, and he'd be like. You could see his brain going, it's the right packet, what am I going to do? Yogurts, I used to wash out the yogurt containers, fill it with pureed fruit. And I was like, it's the same. And I thought, you have to do whatever works. Do whatever works for your child, whether that's hiding rice milk in the normal milk container, whether it's emptying out the cereal and filling it back up with something else. Do whatever works for your child. And then after a while, because he came accustomed to the taste, we didn't need to hide it in the packets and stuff. So it was a lot of things we used for transition. And we used a lot of behavioural therapy in that because we still were doing our traditional therapies, and we were doing ABA and speech therapy and occupational therapy. So all of those therapists were helping us because all of those concepts could be used in the food situation.
And I guess because you made that decision to change his diet, so I'm assuming the foods that were eliminated were your sugars, obviously you said your glutens, wheat, all of that stuff made a huge difference. And with the other therapists that you were working with, were they on board? Did you include them in what you were doing?
I did,
So you had a sort of a team.
It's interesting because at the time there was a little bit of, and there still is, to be honest, a little bit of us versus them. It's the mainstream way or the alternative way, and you will still find people saying, don't go down that path, don't try diet, don't try vitamins because it's not scientifically proven. I was working with a fantastic team of people, and they were like, okay, don't understand it, sounds a bit weird, but happy to go with it. So I feel I was so fortunate that they supported that, because I know other mums have come up against resistance from their therapists who say, well, no, that's not the way I do it, and we use chocolates as rewards or whatever, and they've had the resistance and not been able to implement it. So I feel quite blessed that they were willing to be open-minded enough to support me in that.
Yeah, and I guess for maybe mums and parents that actually have had that or are facing that, would your advice be to if they're sort of feeling that they need to try this method, and I mean, for me it makes perfect sense. You know, I think that food, not only for children that have you know, that have a special need or need to be looked after a little bit more, I don't think there's any difference from them to other children, because behavioural problems stem for every child, and I think food is a big catalyst for it. Would you advise them, or would you suggest that they sort of keep working with their doctors and therapists to try and get them on board? And if they don't, I guess what I'm trying to say, is it worth, well, I know it from reading and just from knowing what, you know, your story with Tim and how he's come ahead, it was worth doing it. So
yeah,
do they stand their ground?
You know what, I if I could say one thing to anyone who's watching, who's considering it, the mother knows. Trust your gut. If you believe that this is going to help your child and you're coming up against the opposition, you either try and get them on board, or you need to find somebody else who's going to support you. Because honestly, you need to trust your gut. There's been lots of therapies that come along, and I will always sit back and watch them and see how it feels for me. There's been some that, and you know, there'll be 50 mothers go, oh my gosh, this is the best thing that they ever did. And I'm like, it's not feeling good to me. And, you know, I'll just sit back and watch that one. But my paediatrician and I agreed to disagree, and never talk about diet again, because he said it was just a coincidence that Tim got so much better when I changed the diet. So because I still needed him to sign forms for school, we just agreed not to talk about it. And my other therapist, I would just say to people, maybe ask them, look, just bear with me, support me for 3 months. I want to do a trial on this. Because what happened was, my behaviour therapist now, she saw the massive difference, and she now can see that in other families that she works with. Like, oh my gosh, if we could do a little bit of the food stuff, how much it helps her. So it was actually like an education for them. Sometimes we're actually educating them as well, because they don't learn about nutrition in their, you know, in their traditional therapies. And I just think you don't need to be either or. Just marrying, I really believe we got the best outcome for Tim because we just married the two. We were still doing the traditional stuff while we were doing this alternative stuff alongside.
Yeah, and I think that's what I really love. I love the fact that not either side has been discounted, and there's not a right or wrong. That you've combined the benefits of both and just gone from there. So, and so Tim now is how old?
He's 15 now.
And he's just got his job.
He's just started working at Macca's of all places. He can't eat much of the food there, but he's started working. Taller than me. Goes to a fantastic school. He's in the band. He's interesting too, and he sometimes looks at kids or sees things about autism, and he looks at me and says, I used to do that, didn't I? And then sometimes he says, why did I do that? Or why did I have problems like that? And I said, well, I don't know. You know, there was, you know, just your brain learnt differently, and we just had to find different ways to teach you. And, you know, he's very, he says, oh, but I'd be Asperger's now. You know, and he's quite happy with that. He is a quirky kid. He still thinks quite differently. Teachers love him because he says what everyone's thinking because he doesn't have the filter.
I love that.
I
love
that. He's really healthy. He's functioning so well. He's in Air Force Cadets. It's great.
That's just absolutely,
he's just doing great.
Amazing. And I guess too now, I know that Kris. Well, firstly, let's have a look. These are Kris's 2 books. So No Cows Today is the book that is pretty much her story with Tim, her personal experience. It is a great book to read. At the end of the show, we're going to have links to where you can actually obtain a copy and where you can contact Kris. And High Thrive Me, which I loved because I guess this is the step-by-step guide to what you need to do in the process of getting your diet or your eating plan and everything together. And I love the fact that it's it has steps, it has exercises to do, and they're just an absolutely, I just loved reading them. So you also work with families to help them with their dietary needs and put a plan together. And you've made a difference to a lot of families, which is fantastic. And I'm going to have all of Kris's details again at the end of our interview, so that you can connect with her. She also has a Facebook page, a support group, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's beautiful support community.
Yeah, and so if you feel that you want to start somewhere, then that will also be available. And I guess I'm so appreciative and grateful that you've come on the show, because it's women like yourself, it's women like Kris that are making such a difference to our world and to our children and to our society, and not too many people know about them. So I'm so happy to support where we can, and I'll definitely have the links up, and please connect with Kris, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
on
for
the show
having me.
today.
It was lovely to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.
Bye.